Talking about the defining decade, and I want to give you guys some tips and tricks for making your kids' high school years really a successful launch pad to the defining decade, which is when your kids hit their 20s. This is a fantastic book, highly recommended by Meg J, The Defining Decade, and I love it because it really gives us some great ideas about what we can do with our kids in junior high and high school to get them launched for success. Now, your kids have developmental tasks all throughout their lives. We all do. And in their really early years, from like birth to 15, 16, even 20, those developmental tasks are pretty short in length of time. So they can be from months to a couple years. But once we hit our 20s, our developmental tasks go by decades. So the defining tasks of the 20s are to establish yourself familially and vocationally. Set up your family away from your family of origin. So, who is your spouse going to be? How many kids you're going to have? That kind of thing. And then, how are you going to pay for them? Your vocation, right? How are you going to pay your bills, and what are you going to do vocationally? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lisa Nehring. I direct True North Online Academy, or True North Academy. We just changed our name because we are fully Cogni accredited. Woot woot. And I also own and operate It's Not That Hard to Homeschool. So we have a lot of resources for you if you're looking into alternative education. But today I want to talk about tip 2. If you missed our first video, I'll link it in the comments, but you want to go check it out. And that was where I just kind of explained the defining decade a little bit and gave you the first tip that I've created from the defining decade, because I'm going to do a podcast about this book and what the defining decade is, what your kids should be really focused on. But what I'm doing right now is helping you understand some really basic skills that you can do while your kids are in the tween and teen years to really set themselves up for success. And tip 1 was exploring areas of interest. Go check out that video. I'll link it in the comments and you can get some more information about that. Today, we are going to talk about teaching networking skills. Now, networking skills, I mean, I'm old, so the 80s, we were all working professionally and working our way up into the world and all those kind of things. And networking was the name of the hour. I mean, everybody was talking about networking events and your card and how you were going to get connected with that person and all those kind of things. But networking seems to have kind of gone out of, like, I don't know, like you don't hear about it too much anymore. And really, I think since 2020, 2022, just networking has really kind of gone out of style. Now we have influencers, and we really look to influencers to tell us what to buy and those kind of things. But I want to go back to networking because I think it's not out of style. It's a way that you can really change your kids' lives. And that is how to help your kids practice connecting with others. One of the most simple things you can do to help your kids network is teach them the power of chatting. I don't know if you've noticed this, but every time we go to restaurants or stand in line for anything, even in the grocery store, people don't chat anymore. I grew up in Ohio, the land of people talking to each other, okay? So you could be in a grocery store line, you would have the person's life story. You guys would have exchange where you got the shoes that you're wearing, et cetera, et cetera. People just chatted. I remember as a kid growing up, my grandpa was the president of the Grange for years, and even well into his 80s and 90s, we would go to a Grange meeting where there would be potlucks and things like that. It's a farmer thing. It was in northern Indiana, and literally he would be surrounded by tens of men, and they would all be just chatting, sharing the news, and all those kind of things. So chatting is such a skill. We need to teach our kids to chat. And what is chatting? It means making those social verbal pleasantries that doesn't spill your guts, it doesn't share your life stories, it doesn't ask the other person to share anything outside of, basic pleasantries. How is the weather? What'd you have for lunch? What's the last book you read? Just general interest questions that get the conversation going so you know you're not alone in the world. I think that's one of the reasons anxiety is on the rise since 2020 and 2022 is because for a year or two we were enclosed in a cocoon and we forgot that chatting is so important and such an acceptable way to connect with other people in the world. And our kids need that skill. If your kids aren't natural chatters, if they're not like just naturally outgoing or extroverts, literally role play with them. Teach them how to introduce themselves. And listen, I mentioned this in the last little video I did. Team Pact is great for this. It teaches the kids to extend your hand, shake hands with somebody, say, "Hi, my name is, what is your name?" Or if you're with somebody else, you introduce them to the other person. And it's such a great social communication, networking kind of opportunity. So don't overlook Team Pact. I love it for that. But role play with your kids about how to introduce themselves, how to ask questions, how to follow up. One of the things my younger kids who are in their 20s are noticing is that when they talk to kids, they'll say, "What do you think about this?" The kid might answer, and no actual back and forth, like, "What did you think of it?" And so we need to teach our kids mutuality in conversation. And that means we need to do it with them, role play with them. Now, one of the easiest ways to do this is to have family meal time together. There's so many great reasons to do family meal time, and the research is in on it. If you have family meal time, all of you at a dinner table where you put the devices away, you don't even have them at the table, you turn them off, you ignore them for that time where you're having a family meal together, you pray together, and you have conversation. You talk about ideas. You ask how their day was. You ask if there was any big events that happened. You have that discussion at the table. You are teaching your kids how to be human in a social context. You are socializing your kids. Woo! Okay, so the family meal is so important. And the research is in kids who have family meal time regularly, they don't commit murders, they don't commit petty crimes and do drugs. I mean, it is such an inoculation against the social evils and ills of this world just by sitting down and eating a simple meal together with your family and talking, having those human connections that are personal, where you're looking at each other, you're teaching your kids table manners. Don't lick the knife, don't put your elbows on the table, all those kind of things. Super, super important. And really, it's such an easy way to really connect with your kids, okay? So teach your kids networking skills, role play, how to introduce themselves, how to ask questions, how to do follow-up questions, and then encourage your kids to participate in community events or clubs to expand their network. So one of the things you could do is, what are the things your kids are interested in? Archery? Go to archery club. But also don't overlook community service. And I know it was hard to do community service for a couple years there, right? Because everybody was worried about germs and stuff like that. And I'm like, wash your hands, okay? PSA here. I totally believe in taking care of germs. But you can do a clothing drive. You can collect books for the library or for a public school. You could write letters to servicemen. There's so many ways to do community service. And writing letters. I still literally, like writing handwritten letters. I still literally have letters from my grandmas, both my grandmas. One who lived on a farm in rural Indiana in Mennonite community, and the other who was a career woman in Chicago. I still have letters from them when I was a little girl. We would write each other back and forth, even though we saw them regularly. And there's such a dear thing to me. My daughter just wrote a handwritten letter. She is the queen of writing letters, and they're beautiful. It's like a little present in the mail. She just wrote a friend of hers in New Mexico, and this person called her up so excited. She goes, "I just got your letter," and it was like literally getting a gift in the mail. She drew pictures, those kind of things. So that is the power of networking right there. Write letters. Write letters. If you're a letter writer, you have endeared someone to you, if it's a handwritten letter, especially if you say, "Hey, it was great to meet you. Thank you for this." We just had an interview for a teacher, and one of our department chairs, she did the interview. She spent a lot of time with this young man, and he never followed up. He didn't send an email. He didn't send a thank you letter, nothing like that. So those things really matter to people, and it's a good way to just build good rapport amongst people you might not know very well. Now, that leads me into another thing that really was highlighted in the book, The Defining Decade, and I love this concept. It goes along with networking, and that is, are you ready for this? Because it's so cool. The power of weak ties. Okay, let me explain. Because maybe I wrote this down. I just thought it was so cool. The power of weak ties. Weak ties are those relationships you don't know very well. Or you might not even know how you know them. But when something comes up, then all of a sudden you have opportunities because of this weak tie. I'm going to give you an example from my own life. So, and I've shared this in workshops and stuff, so you might have heard it already, but it's one of my favorite. Years and years ago, my husband was reading an article in a Christian Jewish relationship magazine. He's really into church history, and so he's really up on what's going on in the churches around the world. And he wrote to somebody in Israel because he'd read something that this person had written in the magazine. And he wrote them and he said, I was really fascinated by this article that you wrote. I would love to be in communication with you. How can we connect? So they connected by email and then by phone. And then another friend of ours in the South Dakota area actually had gone to Israel. Well, guess what? He went to say hi to this person that my husband had connected with. He ended up being a distant cousin of this first person, right? So anyway, it was a connection and then a connection and then a connection. As a result of that, we've met this person several times. As a result of that relationship, I got to edit a book of another mutual friend of ours. As a result of that, my daughter became fluent in Hebrew because of another mutual friend that we knew through that relationship. As a result of that, my son actually got to go to Israel for free with a ministry. As a result of that, my son actually works for that ministry and travels all over the United States and goes to Israel on the regular. As a result of that, he met his wife, who he married this last September. As a result of that, my daughter has gone to Israel as well. And so on and on and on. There's still other things coming out of that relationship, of that weak tie, where my husband called somebody that he didn't even really know. He met because he got to know his writing through a magazine article. So the power of weak tie is so very important, and we need to not overlook this, especially in such an electronic age we live in. But the beauty, the beauty of the electronic age that we live in is that sometimes those weak ties can become strengthened very quickly, like the fact that my husband could find this person and reach out to them very quickly because of social media. And as a result of that, we have this beautiful daughter-in-law, by the way, who's going to have a grandchild for us soon. So all good things, right? Out of a weak tie. It goes into networking, but it really says be aware of the different people that you know in the world, even though you might not know them in a really personal or um, robust way. You might just know of them. One of the examples that Dr. J gave in her book is that she got a box of books one time. She didn't know where they came from. She wasn't really sure. She called the publisher and they're like, we don't know how it got to you. Just enjoy them. It's going to be great. And then years later, when she was writing her book, she didn't know how to get it published. She called this gal and said, I don't know any other publisher, but I just need, where do I even start? And the publisher said, send me your manuscript. Guess what? Her book is published. Okay, so that is the power of the weak tie. But we can't have a weak tie if we're not even willing to do some basic networking. So super important that you teach your kids to network. And I know sometimes we just feel like, well, the kids should figure it out on their own. Here's what is happening. The kids are not figuring it out on their own. We have to pave the way for them. And I don't think that it is really problematic to pave the way for our kids when they're unsure. One of the things Andrew Pudewa said, and I heard this years and years ago, and I loved it so much, was that if your kid is asking for help, then they probably really need help. Most of us don't like to ask for help. Has anybody noticed that? Like when we had our house fire, I don't like asking for help. I'm kind of like, I'd like to do it myself. Okay. I can handle it. If I mess it up, I'll just do it over. Okay. But when you have a house fire and we had some family deaths, you have to have all the help you can take. And so it was a very humbling experience for me, but we had to ask for help because we desperately needed it. We had to board up our house as we went to funerals. And if we didn't, it was just a mess. So teaching your kids to ask for help is a good thing. But if your kids are not doing something you think that they should be doing or that it's age appropriate for them to be doing, it's probably because they do need your help. And when they have it covered, they'll probably say, I've got it. I don't need your help anymore. They might not be that, together about the sentence that they share with you. They might just say back off or something. But I think most of us, if we're not sure how to do it, and it seems like something that needs to be done, it's probably because we need a little bit of help. So don't rush your kids into a place where they're not mature enough to handle. One of the things I see in the alternative education and homeschool space all the time is how to get your kids independent from you. And yes, our kids should be independent learners from us. at some point, and some kids are going to be faster at that independence than others. But listen, there's a thing such as interdependence, and that's the whole point of networking, is that we are interdependent. That's the whole point of the power of weak ties, is that we really are interdependent, and that's a good thing. That's a benefit to all of us. That's how we learn and grow, how we support each other in business and ministry, how we become more mature people, is that we are interconnected with each other. I hope you guys are teaching your kids to network. If you're not sure how, I'd love to hear from you. I've got some great resources that I'd love to share with you. We've got some books we could recommend, and also Beth Purcell's classes on business communication and then podcasting and speech are fantastic places to start, and they're just one semester classes. The kids do digital portfolios. It's a fun class, and it'll teach your kids how to communicate better. And communication might just be the number one soft skill your kids need to have, regardless of what industry or vocation that they're going to go into. How to communicate clearly and well, both verbally and by written word. And that too goes into the power of networking. If we're poor communicators, it's very difficult to network. One of the things I've been noticing with the change in administration is sometimes, and you know, with the last administration too, but more particularly this one, some of the leaders are really good at getting things done, but they're not very good at communicating what they're doing. And so I think there's a little bit of a disconnect for some of us sometimes. But I think if we can teach our kids how to communicate really, really well and with intention, it's going to help them. Again, regardless of what vocation they go into, it's certainly going to help them in their future marriages and as parents, how to communicate clearly and well. And that's something I want for all of our kids, because this world needs some leaders. Can I get a witness? And so our kids, they're up on deck pretty darn soon. Once they hit their 20s, they're ready to go be leaders, and we need to be able to launch them well with the tools and skills that they need. Communication is one of them. Networking, the power of networking. I cannot emphasize this enough. So we need to teach our kids networking skills, and then really consider the power of weak ties. And this might be a good thing to think about with your kids as they go into high school, as you consider maybe some internship opportunities. We're working on developing some for our students at True North Academy, but internship opportunities or even community service or work opportunities, who do you know that they could contact for a potential job? Now, my kids have gotten some interesting jobs from networking. One, cleaning out horse stalls for years. A couple of my kids did that, and it honestly was, I would go because I just loved it, being in the horse barn and doing some manual labor that was like not too strenuous, but also, you know, you worked up a sweat and the horses were there, and it was very, very peaceful. And some other jobs. In fact, my son's job now that he's traveling is because of networking. And so don't overlook the networking opportunities that your kids might have just by the people that you know already in life. I'd love to know if this was helpful to you. I'll be back with some other tips and tricks based on the defining decade and things that I think we can do as parents right now to help our kids set up for a very successful defining decade, which is their 20s. And we have that opportunity right now. Now, most of our kids probably won't live in our home when they're in their 20s. Some of them may, but we can help set them up for success either way by some of the things we determined to do in their tweens and teens. And of course, the first one was encourage exploration of interests, and then the second one was teaching networking skills. I'll be back to talk about more because I just found this so fascinating. I love this book, again, The Defining Decade by Meg J. Highly recommend it. You can get it on thrift books for a couple bucks. Worth the time and investment. I underlined a lot. And anyway, again, I loved it. I hope this has been helpful. Go network. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.